Thank you very much. And we'll get started. So again, thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to have you. And I'd like to thank both Sandy and Dawn, who are here to support me this afternoon, and just keep the chat running and any things that we talk about, making sure everybody's happy and safe within our environment today, which I think is really important, especially when we're talking about what we're talking about, which is menopause. And it's a topic that I've extremely passionate about. I was a fitness instructor for over 40 years, and everything was going swimmingly until I hit menopause, and then the world crumbled. But right now, as I'm in my late 60s, I am extremely grateful for my life as it is now. And I wanted to share a little story with you that actually happened last night. My daughter and son-in-law host a Christmas party every year, and it's bigger than Ben-Hur, and like 100 people show up. And while we were there last night, there was a guy called Travis, who I've met before. I met him last year, and a really nice guy. Lives from Ireland, Regina. He's from Ireland, but lives in Canada now, and his parents live in Ireland. And he said to me last night, he said, I'm not sure you guys really understand what an incredible thing you did when you packed up our life in Australia of 40 years, sold everything, and moved to Canada to be close to your children. And he said, but then he went, and he stopped. I said, it's okay. You can say at your age. That's fine. Because he said, my parents are exactly the same age as you, and they would never have considered it. And for a moment, I kind of just took on board that lovely compliment he made. And then this morning when I woke up, I had a real aha moment. I thought, you know what? That was really brave to sort of sell up everything and move, not knowing anybody. My children live here. This is the reason why we moved. But about 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine reached out to me that I actually haven't spoken to we figured out about 7 years. She lives in New York, and I was in Australia at the time when we became friends. And then she decided to take herself off social media. Amazing gal. And she reached out to me 2 weeks ago, and we hadn't spoken in ages. And we had a call last week, and she was the gal that introduced me to this modality I'm going to teach you today called EFT. And I was in an accountability group with Susan, and she was very insistent that at a time I was going through some real challenges with my health, and I was right in the throes of menopause, and it was all, and I put on weight, and I was grumpy and brain fog. She said, try this modality. And at first I thought, I'm not having a bar of this thing. It looks stupid. Tapping on your face while you're saying the truth of how you feel. Now, a little background of that is that we have a child with autism, and I've seen all sorts of weird therapies over the years that people had thrown at me, and I thought, no, not going there. She was so insistent. She actually had a business in sales that I tried it. Now, the very first time I did it, I felt this massive shift in my thoughts and my process, and I actually went on then to become an EFT trainer and a master trainer in using EFT. And it wasn't until Travis said that to me last night, and I thought about what Susan coming into my life, that I got it. Life hasn't always been like this. I've got a better body now than when I was 40, more energy now than I can remember. We're living the life we love. My husband and I, we've been together. Actually, yesterday was our 45th anniversary of the day we met. And we met in Edmonton in Canada. Couldn't believe I've done this total full circle. And my kids are just doing so well, and we've got great relationships with them. And I thought, wow, because when I was going through menopause and perimenopause, here's me. I'd been in the fitness industry for 25 years then. I gained 20 pounds. How does that happen when you're a fitness instructor? I don't know. I gained 20 pounds because my response to that, my reaction to that was, I could just diet. I'll just eat less, or I'll exercise more. But I was exhausted. I was overweight. I was exhausted. I had brain fog. Couldn't remember my name, let alone anybody else's. I don't know let me know if this has happened to you. You're standing talking to someone that you know and you cannot remember their name. I'll be yes in the chat if you've ever done that. Or I'd be sitting at my desk. I was working in a corporate job at the time, and I'm sitting at my desk. Yep. And I used to have to put together a board report for every Monday morning for the board meeting. And I remember looking at this document thinking, I don't know what to write. And I thought, oh my God, what's happening to me? Now, there's Alzheimer's in my family too. And so that was, oh my God, have I got early onset dementia? No, just going through menopause. Oh, beautiful. And I really felt like I spiraled downwards. I should have known all the right things. I should have known them. But instead, I continued to do what I had been taught to do, which was want to lose weight, reduce calories, exercise more. And it, obviously, my motivation was something to do that was wrong with me. And now I know motivation's got nothing to do with you. And one of the things that happened when I started to introduce EFT was I started to make better choices. And I'm going to be explaining all of this as we go along. And we're going to actually end today with I'm going to go through this. So I want to share, just so you get a visual of what it was when I was going through menopause. So this particular night, well, from the current slide. So this was a particular night. Let me know if you can see that. See that? I was asked to speak at an event for women over 50 who were successful. So this was just before Susan and I had this conversation. Here I am. I had been a fitness instructor for all those years. I just left my corporate job to go back into coaching women. That's another whole story for another time. And I had to go to this event. I couldn't find a thing that fit me. Nothing. I pulled everything out of my closet. Let me know in the chat if this has ever happened to you. You go to an event and everything you try on, nothing fit. Eventually, because I had a half an hour to get to this event, I pulled out a pair of pants that were way too tight for me and I couldn't do the zip up. So I got a piece of elastic and I threaded it through from the button to the buttonhole. Then I had to put a shirt over the top of that. And then I had to put a scarf over the top of that so you couldn't see it. And I went home that night and literally cried all the way home, because how could I have gotten to this point? How could I'd had a TV show back in the 80s. I used to teach fitness on TV. And all of a sudden, everything that I had thought was just not working anymore. And so when I drove home, I really felt like something had to change. And what the fitness industry was teaching wasn't working. And I knew at that point something had to change. It was just when Susan came along and introduced me to this modality that all the pieces fell in place. And that's when I started to trust my own intuition. And what I love about this now is that I actually have, at this point in my life, a better body than I did when I was, back 55. And can I tell you, this is not a result of dieting. This is not a result of excessive exercise. This is a result of what I'm going to teach you today. Not only is my body better now at 68 than it was when I was 50 or 40 even, but my whole life is better. I have a greater understanding of myself as an individual. I recognize now that menopause is a transitional journey back to you. And the result, that, as I get told all the time, how do you stay motivated? Well, I don't stay motivated. It just comes naturally to me now. I want to get up in the morning and go and do a 20-minute workout or a 9-minute workout. And I'll share that later on too. I want to fuel my body because I understand that fueling my body is essential for me to stay focused. And the thing about this is that we have been led down the garden path for so long. And I was in the fitness industry. I was in it in 1980. I began, remember Lycra? Anyone else have Lycra? Leg warmers, step classes, cardio classes, you name it, I did it. And I used to teach four aerobic classes a day. So understanding that what happens in this process is about you, what you believe about yourself. Now, what happens in menopause is this. I truly believe that menopause is a transitional time. Your body goes through these changes like a chrysalis, that has to sort of lock itself away for a period of time. And that you become more of you. But in the process, there's some pain to go through. So the nutrition part and the exercise part is the part that cares for the physical part of your body. The emotional part, the belief structure, the letting go of some old limiting beliefs is the you part. We're always menopausal. Did you know that? On the movie, The M Factor, and I can highly recommend this movie to anybody. It's still only screening in certain places. PBS, if you're in the US, you might be able to pick it up. But The M Factor, brilliant movie. There's a doctor on there who said, you are not postmenopausal. You are always menopausal. If your hormones came back to normal, you'd get a period. Yuck. No, thanks. That's the best part of this is no period. So we're always menopausal. So it doesn't matter whether you're perimenopause, in menopause, you are continuing to be in menopause because your hormones impact on your health for the rest of your life. So one of the things is to beware of false metrics. And as I mentioned before, when I was struggling to lose that belly fat, I jump on the scales every day. And of course, that's not it because you're not measuring the right thing. And I'm going to share a little bit about that in a minute. Because as we age, our body changes and we lose up to 30% of our muscle mass for anywhere past 60. And so what you're measuring if you're jumping on the scales is that you're measuring fat, you're not measuring muscle mass. And so the idea behind this is to actually increase your weight a little bit as we decrease fat. So it's not going to show up on the scales. For most of our problem is this visceral fat. What's visceral fat? It's the fat that sits behind the abdominal muscles. On average, visceral fat increases by 5 to 8% of our total body fat during perimenopause and 15 to 20% of our total body fat in menopause. And women gain, on average, 5 pounds of visceral fat as our estrogen levels decrease and our metabolism slows down. Now, here's the thing with visceral fat. It cannot be reduced just by diet because visceral fat is made up of a whole heap of issues. It could be poor sleep. It could be stress. It could be prediabetes. And interesting enough, back in the pandemic, those with high rates of visceral fat were 138% more likely to end up in ICU. And visceral fat has been linked to type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some cancers, and some inflammatory diseases. So what we're going to do is focus on how we release visceral fat. And as I said, it's a container. It's a lot of aspects. And then I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit later on. Now, when we restrict calories, it impacts on our metabolism and our brain function, which are the two things I think for most of us that we find very difficult. Let me know in the chat below if that's what you're struggling with at the moment. But the diet-focused industry and low-fat dogma has resulted in us being under-muscled, protein deficient, and processed food overloaded. Let me know in the comments. I'm just going to stop the share for a sec. Let me know in the comments, were you part of the low-fat generation? Did you low-fat yogurt, low-fat cheese, low-fat, take all the fat off everything. Don't eat any fat because it's going to put on fat. That theory came about by a study, believe it or not, that was sponsored by the Heart Foundation. And it was to push people to stop eating things like butter, drinking milk, and whole fat. And the push was for things like margarine, which are seed oils. Those seed oils, and I'll talk about that in a little bit in a minute, have been linked to now many of our problems. You'll hear a lot in the press now. Yeah, Mary, absolutely too scared to eat anything today. Exactly. Like, it's just been this dogma that's pushed in. You're going to see a lot of this coming out in especially in the US. There's been a big Senate inquiry in the US about what's in food. And the seed oils in food have now been linked to so many of our health issues, especially with children. Yeah, Dawn, it was promoted to eat junk food. I know, 100-calorie packages, right? And I was part of that. Like I used to teach 4 aerobic classes a day when I was 25 till about 35. I taught 4 aerobic classes a day because more was better. I used to take all the skin off my chicken. I would only eat if the meat was absolutely lean, like eating leather. I would only ever eat low-fat cottage cheese, low-fat yogurt. Yeah, it's exactly, Stella. High in sodium too. And I was in an industry where we wore lycra leotards, and in the 90s we wore G-string lycra leotards. Like, you had to be skinny, and that was the goal. I took, as I said, 4 aerobic classes a day. I also would run 6 kilometers a day 3 times a week. And I would live on grilled chicken breast, take the skin off, steam broccoli, and that's it. And there was a competition in our gym where I worked, when I went back to Australia, to be how much do you weigh? Like, it was just this whole thing about what you weighed. And, a mini aerobic instructor now is very unhealthy. Let me tell you, because that's what happened when I hit menopause. My metabolism had dropped so low. My body fat had dropped so low. My muscle mass, because I dieted, was low. So when when menopause hit and the changes in my gut microbiome happened, that's where the weight went on, because I didn't have the muscle mass to increase my metabolism. So the key to all of this is we have to relearn how to fuel our bodies. And that, can I tell you, is a big deal. Because the belly fat brain fog key strategy is to eat more, not less. And I know for many of you, and if any of you came out of that low fat area, it's really challenging. In fact, I had a client last year whose doctor, this woman was about 5 foot, she's about 5'6" or 7. And we went to school together, so we're the same age. And he'd put her on a 1,200 calorie a day diet. And I said to her, all that's doing is stopping the inevitable. That's all that's doing. You need 1 gram per pound desired body weight of protein, 30 grams of fiber, and intermittent fasting and carb cycling can help. I've just lost my screen. Sorry, guys. There we go. Let me just get this back down. All right. So you need to be looking at, 1 gram of protein per desired body weight. So whatever your desired body weight is. So, and I'm not talking about super skinny. I'm just, what's your normal kind of fighting weight? So for me, yeah, Dawn, exactly. It's all back. Exactly. And because when we go on restricted calorie diets, we lose not only fat, we lose water and we lose muscle mass. And as I said before, our muscle mass decreases as we get older. And so what we need to be focused on is building muscle. That's got to be priority. And the only way, there's two ways you can do that. One is the protein. We've got to increase protein. And so we've got to change that mindset about if I eat less, I'll weigh less. No, that's been sold to us. We need to eat more, because if we fill our bodies full of good whole foods, and I'm talking not stuff that comes from a packet, I'm talking the stuff that's on the outside of the supermarket, fruit and vegetables, meat, chicken, seafood, dairy, and not filling our trolleys full of ultra processed or processed foods. That's the key to this. Now, what I find, since we moved to Canada, we used to always shop at farmers markets in Australia. So we would buy avocados from the guy that had the avocado farm an hour down the road, or the banana was an hour, the guy that grew the banana was an hour and a half away. Here, everything in Canada is shipped in from somewhere, except berries, which are just brilliant, and some root vegetables. And I noticed here the amount of processed foods there are. And so one of the things that I really encourage my clients to do is become a label reader. Before you take anything off the shelf, what's in it? And you will find, if you're buying something with 17 or 27 ingredients in it, let me ask you, when was the last time you cooked something with 17 ingredients or 27 ingredients? I don't. It's going to have 4 or 5 with salt before I'll cook. So number one, fueling your body. So 30 to 40 grams of fiber. And you can get that with piece of fruit, cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli, cauliflower, those type of really good things, and whole wheat. I recommend sourdough bread. If you can get a good sourdough bread, it's really good for your gut. So if your focus is on, okay, how do I get this into my body so I'm fueling it, you will find, A, you won't be hungry, number one, because you've just got to eat so much. And B, you'll have more energy. And C, because you're not filling your body full of processed foods and ultra-processed foods, which are full of seed oils, your brain fog will go away. So as we move into menopause, the gut-brain connection changes, and estrogen dropping has a massive impact on our gut microbiome. Estrogen actually, even though it's produced in the ovaries, we have estrogen receptors all over our body. So menopause impacts on women very differently. Some may have things like frozen shoulder, can be caused by lack of estrogen, joint pain, brain fog, weight gain, and sometimes hot flashes don't even happen. Sleep is another thing that's an issue. And I'll share a little bit about that in a minute. But the thing about it is that the thing is learning to refuel my body. And I teach in the program that I run how to be an intuitive eater. Because one of the things that I have discovered in my 45 years in doing this is that what food is right for one person is not right for the next. There are no one size. That's why diets don't work for everybody. I come from, let me know if you recognize some of these. Atkins diet. Who was the other one? Nathan Pritikin diet, which was low fat, everything up. There was Fit for Life, which you only ate fruit till 12 o'clock. Towards morning, so low carb, low fat, paleo, keto, you name it. Every now and it comes across every decade. And as I said, I'm doing this a long time. And remember egg and grapefruit. Remember the egg and grapefruit diet. And does anybody remember the Israeli army diet? Just quietly, that was like 2 days of apples, 2 days of cheese, 2 days of something else. And you could lose 10 pounds, but won't straight back on again. And so though, like people say, keto really worked for me, or paleo really worked for me, you should be doing it. Well, it doesn't work for everybody. our gut microbiome and who we are changes. And so being an intuitive eater and understanding how food impacts on you, because your body will always tell you. And it usually shows up as inflammation. You might find that your hands are swollen, your face is puffy, your joint pain is worse. That's inflammation. That means it's something you've eaten, your body is fighting against. But that's what inflammation does. It's like if you cut your finger, it swells and the body sends blood to try and fix it. That's what inflammation is. It's the body saying something's here that's not working, so I'm going to turn up this inflammation. And the problem is that for many of us, we live in this inflamed state and we don't know it. We will blame our lack of sleep on something. We will blame our joint pain on something. Oh, maybe it's my arthritis, or maybe it's my rheumatism. And the bottom line is often inflammation, and it comes back to a food or something you're eating your body isn't agreeing with, and it's trying to tell you. But we get so caught up in the diet dogma that we don't listen because somebody lost 10 kilos doing da 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 da. The same with intermittent fasting. As a woman going through those later stages of menopause, you shouldn't be doing the same intermittent fasting every day. The intermittent fasting, does everybody know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about intermittent fasting? Okay, so, and often we call it time-restricted eating. So intermittent fasting is where you have a window of eating and you have a window of not eating. And that window of not eating is what we call rest and digest. It allows the body to process the food and turn it into energy for all parts of our body. But as we move through our menopausal journey, the key is, the key is not to do the same thing all the time. Excuse me, I'm going to have a drink of water because my throat's, yep. Might everybody else have a drink of water too? That's another thing, ladies. We all need to be drinking more water. I'm just getting over a cold, so I knew my throat was going to catch a bit. Back to intermittent fasting. So it's not doing the same thing all the time. So there's 12-12. So finish eating at 7 o'clock in the morning. You don't start eating again until 7 o'clock at night. Basically, it's don't snack at night. You might want to stretch that out to 14-10, moving your breakfast a little further 2 hours after you wake up. Or you might want to switch it to 16-8, which seems to be the trend. Now, the thing with 16-8, it's just like you finished eating at 7 o'clock, you're not going to have something to eat till 11 o'clock the next day. But the key is not to do the same thing every day. That you might do 16-8 for a couple of days. You might do, say, a 12-12. You might just not fast at all on the weekend. And that helps the body readjust. We fall into this habit of doing the same thing all the time, and our body needs to change things up a little bit. Yeah, so, excuse me, so understanding, again, it's come back to listen to your body. Okay, let me do another share, and we'll get, all right. All right, this is my big bugbear. This is I think if you honestly just do this one thing when you leave this call, it will make an enormous difference to your life. And that is ditching seed oils. Now, in 1961, the AHA, American Health Association, accepted $20 million in today's terms, funding from Procter & Gamble by recommending replacing butter with heart-healthy alternatives like vegetable oil and Crisco oil. Now, Procter & Gamble, Mr. Procter and Mr. Gamble, figured out a way of what to do with leftover seeds, sunflower, safflower, rice bran, that they could put it through this enormous process. If you went to a seed oil manufacturing plant, you would never eat it again, where it goes through a series of, they have to crush these seeds, and what comes out is black. It goes through, they're like oil refineries, these big seed oils. They're like oil refineries. And you crush that through that. What comes out smells terrible and is black. So they have to put deodorizers in it, and they have to put colorings in it to make it look like oil. And it's now gotten to a point where the seed oils are now have infiltrated to almost every aspect of our food chain. Told me this many years ago. And this was when I was 30, mind you. She said, you girls, you young girls, try to do so much. And I think everybody on this call is probably the same. We are doing way more than our parents ever did at our age. I remember my mother at 50, before she got sick, saying, I just want to just retire. 50. I'm 10 years that I'm younger now. I just want to retire. I've had enough. I just want to knit. Women weren't expected to have so much in their brain. We weren't expected to do so much as we age. But we've changed now. We live in a different world now. We have access to information, and we have access to things that we can possibly do that our parents didn't have access to, and our mothers in particular. And so what we're expecting our bodies, we're trying to change our body in a generation, is what we're trying to do is we have very high expectations about what we can and can't do and what we should and shouldn't be doing. And so to support that, you have to care for it. We have to change the way we've always done things. That's what's critically important. All right, I'm going to move quickly on because I want to where's my share screen? I want to make sure we have plenty of time to do an EFT session before we finish. And I want to share with you what I've got going on, a little bit of an offer I've got for you. All right, menopause strategy number 3, your body and brain need good fat. Oh boy, this riles me up when I think of those studies that were done. Cholesterol, big question mark over it. Who was pushing it? A lot of new research coming about what's a normal cholesterol level, because our brain needs cholesterol for brain function. Our body needs fat for essential brain function. Do you know 2/3 of all people diagnosed with Alzheimer's are women? And I've spoken to many friends of mine whose parents are going through this process, their mothers in particular. And when I ask the question about nutrition, they'll all say they grew up in the era of that low fat time or didn't really care about nutrition. My mother was one of 9, and she passed at 56 of breast cancer from or with, we're not quite sure, breast cancer. And of the 9, 5 have died with Alzheimer's or dementia, with or of Alzheimer's. There's only 3 of them left now. The number's right? Yeah, 3 of them left. And I look back to their not only childhood trauma, they were evacuated from New Guinea during the war, but their nutrition changed when they all grew up in New Guinea. My grandfather worked in New Guinea. My grandmother lived up there. And their nutrition changed dramatically when they moved back to Australia, from really totally, my mother used to say that just fresh fruit and vegetables and meat, and they killed the pigs and, chickens, to white bread and cheese and, because they had no money. And it's really interesting now, the stuff I know about nutrition, to see where this was laid down. So your brain and your body need good fat. It fuels your body and gives you energy, and it helps with your hormonal health. Good fats. We're talking, as you can see, coconut oil, olive oil, avocados and avocado oils, things like salmon, nuts, chia seeds, essential for our health. But they also help us absorb the certain vitamins A, D, E, and K, which are essential for our brain. Good fats are anti-inflammatory. So the stuff you see in the supermarket, that Crisco and all that stuff, it's inflammatory. These are anti-inflammatory, and that's what we need to be focusing on. But they help control sugar cravings by balancing your blood sugar. So when you're eating high amount, the 100 or whatever your protein calculation is, and you're focusing on muscle mass, and you're limiting your inflammatory foods and eating high things are high fat, you actually crave less because your body isn't starving and looking for foods. And this manufactured fat is not what our body's looking for. Our body's looking for the good fats. And helps you keep your skin soft and supple. Well, what else? Now, menopause strategy number 4. Simple sugars and simple carbs cause cravings and brain fog. So the problem with us, for many of us, is when we're stressed, what our brain goes looking for are foods that quickly create endorphins and serotonin. And high endorphins and serotonin come from high processed, sugary, colored foods. That's why people become addicted to them and they keep eating them, because it gives them for a moment an endorphin hit. You know, I remember back in the pandemic when we all shut down, everybody went home and baked cakes and bread, because those foods made you feel some level of comfort. You know, we all kind of went back to when grandma made bread and cakes, and you know, my grandmother used to make the best lemon tarts in the world, and so I love lemon meringue pie, I'm sure of it. But those foods give you a quick sugar lift straight to the brain. The brain feels good for 5 minutes. Blood sugar level drops, you feel lousy, and you reach for something more because your body's hungry. So that's where things like those high fiber foods. You don't have to have a piece of broccoli instead of a donut. Other things you can do, but making sure you're having the good fats, protein, and good quality complex carbohydrates will help with the brain fog and sugar cravings. Strategy number 5, strong over skinny. I cannot tell you this. This was a great study. In a study of women and men aged 61 to 77, participants strength trained twice a week for 25 weeks. At the end of the trial, the men and the woman lost equal amounts of fat, under 4 pounds, but the women lost a significant amount of abdominal fat, both subcutaneous and visceral. Why? Because we are naturally, as we go through menopause, lose that muscle mass. So when we focus on building the muscle mass, we increase our metabolism. We increase our metabolism, our body learns how to process energy much faster and builds that muscle mass that continues to increase your metabolism. Because dieting in the long term, all of a sudden, has stripped our metabolism. And losing, and that's our metabolism exists in our muscles. But the other thing about muscle mass is helps with immunity. It helps with strength, helps build bone density, helps you protect you from falls. You know, for many older women who have hip fractures, for instance, their hip actually breaks first and then they fall because of poor bone density. So at this age, we need to be focusing on not exercising, you know, for calorie, but exercising to build muscle, because in turn, that'll increase your metabolism, and that in turn will increase your energy. And I have simple ways to do that, which change everything for me. Key strategy number 6 is visceral fat gain and brain fog, and it's the reaction to cortisol. Let's look where we're at. Sandy, I think I have done way much more than my mum. Exactly right. Yes. Like when I think back to my mother saying at 50, you know, I just want to retire. And I thought, wow, that's 18 years younger than I am now. Oh, I wouldn't want to retire and just be boring as hell. Mary, so more busy now that I am retired. Love my grandkids, hiking, husband, and house. Yes, right? So that's the energy you want to be able to maintain that. We looked after a little 7-month-old baby last week, friend of my daughter's, little boy, cute as a button. But oh my gosh, getting up and down from the floor with him, trying to get him into the stroller. I thought, thank God I've got the strength. He's a big boy and he's a bit of a wiggle bum. Just to pick him up, you know, to be able to be strong in my abdominals and strong in my arms. It was really, really powerful. So we're going to talk about stress now. And this is when I want to talk about EFT. So what is it? It is a evidence-based modality with over 100 studies now on its ability to reduce cortisol, our stress hormone, by up to 30 to 35% within minutes of doing it. And of course, stress has now been linked to so many of our just our body and health. I think in the pandemic, and I see this coming, and I keep referring to that because it was, I think, a real change for many of us. We lifted up and began to live in this low-grade stress and anxiety because we didn't know what was going to happen next. And I sense it happening again. There's so much unrest in the world. There's so much happening. It's it's like we can't grab hold of anything. We just never quite know what's going to happen next. And so naturally, because that's our flight and fight response, our often our stress levels are just elevated. We're kind of used to it. And that low-grade stress and anxiety kind of kicks over. When you have that low-grade stress and anxiety happen, and then you have something stressful in your life, your cortisol levels will peak, and so will your adrenaline levels. They are the flight and fight response. They are what the body naturally does to protect us. You go back to the claw and fang jungle days, and that's what happened. We were in stress, and saber-toothed tiger was chasing us. Stress levels rose, cortisol levels rose, because we're going to kill it or run from it. So what happens is that you go into this stress, you might have an issue at work, or, somebody's braked really hard in front of you and you're, stopped really quickly. Your stress and cortisol levels rise. Now, what happens when that happens is that blood flow leaves the arms and the legs for you to do something. Slam your foot on the brake, put your hand up, and back in the claw frame jungles, of course, run. But what happens now is that when we don't do something to relieve that stress, it never quite settles to the zero again. Instead, the body holds on to that hormone, cortisol, and lays it down as belly fat, just in case you need the energy again. And so you add in, we'll do things like set a one-word theme for the year, create goals for the year, set aside in January. It's a 2-day event, and it's only $47. Just for, if you're interested, click on the link later. But anyway, let's do a tapping, because I'm very at time, and I'll show you how it works. Number one, I want you just to think about something that's driving you a bit crazy at the moment. It's a bit stressful. Might be your weight, might be something that's going on at work that's not working, might be frustration over somebody's doing it. I don't want a big thing. I want something little. And I want you for the moment to just think about that little thing that's driving you crazy. And if you could let Jackie in, please. Thank you. She's a friend of mine. Thanks, Sandy. I want you to think about that little thing. And I want you to measure on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being big and 1 being not so much, how annoying that is. Hey, Jackie, how annoying that thing is. Just let me know in the comments. Just pop yes if you've got something. Yes, yes, yes. Great. Thank you. Now, feel in your body where you feel that energy, whether it's stress or anxiety. And just where do you feel it in your body? You might feel it in your neck. I feel everything in my gut, or my chest, or your back. Just where do you feel that? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, as I said, what's the feeling? If you could put a number to it, and write that down. Shoulders, gut, upper right shoulder, great, Stella. Dawn, 6 to 7, great, good. All right, Stella's an 8, awesome. So I want you to stay focused on that, whatever it is. And this is generalized tapping. The tapping works best always if we get very specific, but for this exercise, I want it to be quite general. So let's look at the tapping points. You always start off on the side of the hand. You're going to follow along with me, okay? And we tap here. We call this to prevent psychological reversal. So what we're doing is trying to get really clear on how you feel. Tapping works best when you're specific, whatever the thing is. So I might say stress. I can feel it in my stomach, and you're going to say I feel anxious or fearful or whatever it is you're feeling. And you're going to be specific where you feel it. And I'm just going to use general. So 3 times here. Then we're going to go to the tapping points. So we start off where the eyebrow meets the nose and just tap here. And then we're going to follow the brow around, and we're going to tap on the outside of the eye. Remember I told you that's where people tend to rub if they've got a headache. The next part is right under the eye, on the bone, directly under the pupil. The next one is the nose point, right directly under the nose. Next one is the chin point, but it's the groove of the chin, not down here, but right here. The next one's a little bit more complicated. It's so where you find the collarbone points that meet in the middle, you're going to just drop down. It's a little bit kind of fleshy, just sitting under the bone. The next one is under the arm, and it's about where your bra strap sits. So it's about 3 or 4 inches below the armpit. And the last one is right at the very top of the head, not the back, but right at the very top of the head. The Chinese, interesting, call this the 100 star point, I think it's called. And it was the one when I was training. I said, can we drop this one? Like, it looks like we're just like gorillas. No, that's really important. Okay, cool. I'll do it then. All right. So focused on your thing, focused on your issue. You're just going to repeat after me as I say it and stay focused on that issue. Okay. Just tapping on the side of the hand like this. Even though I feel this level of stress, and it's about a level, whatever it is, I deeply and completely accept myself and how I feel. Even though I feel this stress in my gut or shoulders, I deeply and completely accept myself and how I feel. Even though I feel this stress in my gut, this level 8 stress, I deeply and completely accept myself and how I feel. All right, we're going to tap. So you can do 2 hands or 1 hand, whatever is right for you. This stress I feel under the eye, feeling this stress, this level 7 or 6 stress, feeling it in my gut, all this stress under the arm, this stress I feel, feeling it in my gut, this level 8 stress, feeling all this stress. Didn't realize it was there until I focused on this stress. This level 6 or 7 stress, feeling it in my gut or my shoulders, under the arm, all this stress, top of the head, feeling this stress. Okay, just want you to take a deep breath and let it go. Have a sip of water if you've got one handy. And I want you to go back to that feeling now. And tell me if you can feel a shift at all, up or down. And just let me know in the chat. Much better. Great, Sandy. Stella, you were an 8. Where is it now? 6. Great. Shoulders are more relaxed, Dawn. About a 4 now. Great. Terrific. Anybody else? Mary, how did you do? I might unmute you, Mary. Do you mind if it just telling us? Are you on your phone? Oh, there she is. Yeah. I think you're on your phone. It's hard, isn't it, when you're on our phone? So is anybody, now it's interesting, the thing with about EFT, if you just keep typing, Mary, the interesting about EFT is that when you, what we're aiming for is a 0 to a 2 with EFT. And the reason is, it's like to get that stress down. Now, if I was working with you one-on-one, I would be asking you, what's the story of this stress? What causes it? How does it make you feel? Because it's like, if you've got the garbage, someone says, Mum, the kitchen garbage smells bad. When you don't get right down to the 0 or 2, it's like spraying deodorizer over the garbage instead of taking it out. And that's the problem with a lot of the online tapping, is that they'll make you feel better for a period of time. Because, we said Stella's went down from 8 to 6. But I said, if I was working with you, I'd have it come down even further. I'd want to really getting it right down, because then what we can do when it's down is that the neurons in the brain, and they've studied this under MRI. In fact, my mentor is an associate professor at the university in Australia and studied this under MRI. And when you tap, the neurons in the brain are, wired together, fired together. You've probably heard that saying before. When we tap and reduce stress, the neurons for a split second pull apart and they rewire. And so when they rewire, what we want to do is we want to lock in a new way of thinking. And so we have to get it down to a 0 or a 2 before we can lock that new way of thinking in. Otherwise, it just goes back together. And did you know our brain naturally will go to a negative thought than a positive thought? Because that's the way our brains work. It's smoother, a negative thought. In fact, we have, I don't know how many thousands thoughts and lots of stuff about that. Most of them are negative and most of the same things. So it's got to drop to a 0 or 2 in order for you to rewire it. But for instance, with Stella, when we drop from 8 to a 6, that means your cortisol levels are coming down, which means that's, you're going to feel better. You're going to make better decisions about that. And that's what we're doing with EFT all the time. I mean, I've seen some incredible things happen with EFT. A client of mine, Julie, she won't mind because I tell this story all the time, in Australia, she doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, but she used to drink 2 liters of Coca-Cola a day. And when she hit perimenopause, she said, this has got to stop, because suddenly and of course, we all know sugar's addictive. We did one tapping session with her, went about an hour and a bit, and she stopped drinking Coca-Cola. And when I checked up on her, that was 4 years ago. She came and saw me again for another matter that had happened with her mother. But I said, have you drunk Coke again? She said, never. She said, I literally went from 2 liters of Coca-Cola a day to nothing. Because what we got to was would reason she was reaching for the Coca-Cola, which made her feel better, which was blocking an issue that had happened to her, a memory that had happened to her, where she just sort of calmed her nerves. She started drinking Coca-Cola. So when you have something that's repeating all the time, there's a story there. And there's a story behind every decision we make. There's a story behind when we don't do what we say we're going to do. There's a story behind procrastination, and it's often fear. Or it's a story of not being wanting to be seen, or it's a self-sabotage, or, a gazillion million other things. But we've gotten so used to blaming ourselves for not sticking to something, not sticking to healthy eating. Got to be something wrong with me. My body won't do this. And it's not. It's a story we're telling ourselves. And when you clear that, and that's what happened when I began working with EFT, and I felt it the first time Susan did that session with me, and then went on to train much later. And in fact, I tapped every day for 365 days. Every day I tapped. And I can tell you, I was not the same person after that. I remember coming downstairs one Sunday. I'd been tapping on something that had come up for me. And I said to Jerry, my husband, who am I? I don't know who I am. Because these stories I carry that I thought were me were not me. They're not me. They were things I were told. They were the stories I told myself based on things that happened to me in the past. I was very fortunate to come from a very good family, but my dad was emotionally distant. And I spent my whole life trying to prove myself to my dad. And he didn't know how to say I love you. He's no great guy. Like, we were very, very fortunate, hardworking man. My mum was lovely. But when he passed, my sisters and I talked. He only passed 2 years ago. We talked a lot about, man, all of us were just these high achievers who nothing was ever good enough. And when I was able to clear all that, then I settled into being able to be myself. And I think we all do that. We all have these stories that come from somewhere else. They're not ours. Gary Craig calls it the palace of possibilities. And he says we have a palace of possibilities in our world. And it's like sticking sticky notes on the wall behind you. And one of the things we used to have to do in EFT in our training was we had to tap on 100 things that had happened to us in our lives that didn't turn out the way we wanted them. Oh, God, how am I going to tap on 100 things? But what was interesting, you'd get to a key element and a whole lot of things would collapse around it. And it was then I realized the pattern I'd created in my life. I'd get to a certain point in my life and I'd feel like an imposter and I'd pull back. So many times in my life. I look at my kids now. We were out last night and my daughter's married a fabulous guy. And I thought, these terrific kids, I said to my husband, they're a result of us working on ourselves. That's what they've mirrored. It's because we are, and the women, you are here, whether we like to admit it or not, we are the center of the houses. We're the center of our house. And us clearing our stuff, the wonderful thing about, I nearly forgot to tell you, wonderful thing about EFT is, as you clear the stuff for you, you're clearing the stuff for the future generations because they're not carrying that story that you had. You're changing them as you're changing yourself. So we are at 20 past. I want to do a quick reframe of EFT to sort of wrap this up. And I would really love it if you'd have a look at that 2-day event upcoming in January. We're doing over 3 hours. Thank you, Sandy. Sandy's just popped the link in. And we're going to make sure 2025 just pans itself out for you, that, there'll be no such thing as having to